Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering to discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on the thing. The show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. If you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott back on the show. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? And if all goes according to plan, this is our first video version of this show as part of our kind of year two push to do more video quote unquote content. Basically just do more with the YouTube and hopefully Twitch streaming and stuff. One of the things I've been working on is getting OBS and overlays and stuff set up for video versions of the podcast. So hopefully that's all going well and you're seeing our lovely faces if you're watching this on YouTube, as opposed to the kind of static images we had for pretty much all of year one over at that nerdy site. And today we are going to be diving all into The Mandalorian Season 1 specifically. We might since Cam hasn't actually seen the first episode of season 2, we're recording this the night before the second episode goes out, so we probably won't dive into anything season 2, so you should be fine there. But we will probably do full spoilers and stuff for season 1 of The Mandalorian. Timing wise, obviously this would have been a little bit better for SEO purposes to have gotten this out like a week ago, but we were doing a whole bunch of Halloween stuff, so that's kind of where we chased that SEO bandwagon as opposed to anything. Because as I found out doing our kind of overall analysis of year one content, holiday SEO stuff can really pay off, as evidenced by the fact that on St. Patrick's Day, our Darby O'Gill episode of that D Plus show had like 800 hits because people were just like looking for it, I'm guessing, and they hopped onto our video and were like, this isn't the movie, bounced out. But yeah, it was like
No. It was much more of a. I've reached out to some of those people,
of course,
and they've come back and they told me they're like, we saw that the number one Darby O'Gill fan Stan was there to defend the film. They didn't feel like they needed to watch it. They knew that it was going to get the grade that it got, an A plus. So
yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what happened. Yeah, that was just a fun, like, looking through the numbers and doing some analysis and just seeing like a giant spike up, and I was like, what the hell was that? Like, did we do something special on St. Patrick's Day? And then I go in and look at, like, dig into the numbers a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what it was. Yeah, lots of fun there on year one of that D Plus show. So The Mandalorian season 1. What's kind of your relationship with the first season of The Mandalorian, Cam? Did you watch it kind of as it was coming out, or did you kind of
yeah.
catch up on it after the fact?
Not only did I watch it as it came out, I actually watched it side by side. My brother-in-law and sister. Disney Plus came out not too long after I started living with them.
Mm-hmm.
After graduated college, couldn't find a job, and was losing my place to live. My sister said, "Hey, we live out," and so for understanding where what happened, I ended up, like, I've talked about this before on other podcasts. I moved out to, like, outside of Phoenix, to a completely, like, outside, like, to a different county. Um, Shout out to Pinal County, by the way, holding it down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was a massive transition. So I was kind of like out of like things to do. Had no money because I wasn't working, and had a tremendous amount of student debt. Um, and so I ended up just like, it became kind of a weekly ritual. We watched all the episodes as they came out. It was a really good time. Uh, but for me personally, like, from the moment they announced the Mandalorian, I said this could be good. Then they said Jon Favreau's behind it, and I'm like, this could be amazing. Jon Favreau is, and then they announced like the creative team behind it, and I'm like, this could be phenomenal. Like, this really could be phenomenal. The way that they're like, we're gonna have different directors for each episode. Um, we're going to have just like these really, like, we're gonna bring on the people that know Star Wars more than anyone else. And for somebody like Jon Favreau, who has, like, spoken about it before, but like George Lucas was a massive inspiration to him.
Mm-hmm.
And this Mandalorian actually as a project was something of a um, like bridge building exercise between George Lucas and what is now Lucasfilm Studios, or just Lucas Studios, as a part of Disney, in that he was invited to watch the filming of the first two episodes, and apparently like thought it was really great, thought what they were doing was really stupendous. So like it really goes to show, like it was a really cool thing. But like I have gone on the record by saying like I not only am I a big fan of westerns, I thought Solo was a pretty good movie,
Mm-hmm.
which is like something that I've gotten a lot of heat for, um, because Solo at its core is not technically a Star Wars movie. Like it has all the Star Wars like motifs, but it's a western film
Mm-hmm.
versus a space like Odyssey epic, which Star Wars has kind of turned into as a norm.
Yeah.
You know these big galaxy spanning stories, and Solo, and like there's a lot of nitpicking I think that Solo gets unfairly.
Yeah, I think Solo would have
But
been very like if we didn't know all of the behind the scenes turbulence of Solo, I think that influences people's perception on that movie way more than we think it does or we realize it does. Um,
yeah,
because I mean, I definitely think there are some things in Solo that are really stupid and really didn't need to be in there. But I think overall, yeah, it's another fun Star Wars adventure. And I like whenever those tweets go around of like, what's your hottest, Star Wars take, or what's your hottest blah 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 take, like I don't remember, I don't know if I've ever tweeted it out, but it's like my hottest Star Wars take is probably I think Alden Ehrenreich does a better job as Han Solo or shows more range as Han Solo in that one movie than Harrison Ford does over the course of his whole time as that character. Because Harrison Ford is playing like one note of that character pretty much throughout it all, and Alden Ehrenreich actually has to like emote and kind of show some range based on the events of that movie.
you know, I think that like we got to see, it's always funner to see somebody lose their edge, lose their shell, and open up and become a more fun person, like you see with Han Solo in the original trilogy. And I think that it's a tougher ask to expect somebody to show how that builds, because you get a bright-eyed youth who gets thrust into like a turbulent life, where he gets out of essentially child slavery and ends up becoming like trying to become a pilot. And
This roguish character that we all know
yeah,
and love.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like how does this dweeb become the suave gunslinger that we come to love?
yeah. But
And
admittedly, we are not
it's
here to talk about Solo today.
oh yeah, we're
We're
not,
here to
sorry.
talk about The
Yeah,
Mandalorian. But
sorry,
I do
yeah. So
appreciate,
the
yeah,
man,
that
yeah,
that The Mandalorian and Solo share that very much that Western aesthetic, and that's something that,
they do.
especially watching the season 2 premiere again, that we won't really go into, but like it really leans hard into the Western side of things,
Yeah.
and so many of the episodes, both that first episode of season 2, but also so many of these episodes in season 1 are that man with no name kind of
Hmm.
gunslinger coming into a town, saving the day, saving the townsfolk, and then leaving and going off and doing his next adventure. It's
A full,
yeah,
yeah, a full fistful of dollars type of situation.
yeah. And there is that, to go off of what you kind of touched on earlier of George Lucas kind of showing up and kind of getting to be involved in the first couple days. One of the things that we actually have already done is we've recorded episodes about the Disney Gallery show, kind of the behind
Yeah,
the
we did.
scenes show on The Mandalorian. We recorded those before we recorded this, and in those you see George Lucas kind of showing up, and his excitement behind the scenes, being on set, his excitement in particular at like the tech that makes this show possible. I think is one of the things that
Hmm.
really stood out to me, as well as one of the other little things. Just jumping ahead to a little quick trivia bite, that reminded me of. The Mandalorian's Phase Pulse Blaster is based on Boba Fett's rifle from the Star Wars Holiday Special, and I remember in the Disney Gallery, like Jon Favreau being really excited to like share that with George Lucas, and George Lucas basically dismissing it and being like, I didn't really have much to do with the holiday special. I don't really like it, right? And and so just like that excitement that Favreau had just immediately being dashed. Just really, it was something that jumped out at me.
It
That
is
I
the that
immediately
is the
thought of.
yeah, that is the experience that every Star Wars creator has to go through.
Yeah,
Is the eventual letdown that George Lucas really isn't that invested in Star Wars as a a micro property.
yeah,
Like he likes Star Wars as a macro property where it talks about big ideas, big fundamental like conversations about good versus evil, like fascism versus rebellion, like fascist empires versus quirky rebellions. Like the things that George Lucas likes are definitely the much larger things. So when people think George Lucas is going to be cool about them geeking out about a very micro scope, like a micro
the little Easter eggs that
like
they put in.
yeah, little Easter eggs or something. No, like if you want to talk to him about like the kind of tech you use to like the cameras and stuff, like he's a film geek and he kind of like ended up falling face first into like he's an indie film geek who fell face first into mainstream success.
Yeah,
Uh, like his film American Graffiti is incredible, but it's also very like nuanced and niche to a point where Star Wars as a kind of like big epic adventure film is questionable. How would that have gotten made? Like the making of Star Wars documentary that's on Disney Plus is actually incredibly stupendous about going into the auteur turned like prolific director, and it was him, Kubrick, and Spielberg who all came out of kind of the same film
hmm,
classes, and ended up like Kubrick stayed very much like non-mainstream, even though he's made some of the most impactful films of the last 50 years. He's also a total psychopath,
yeah,
or was. He's dead now. And Steven Spielberg ended up like creating the summer blockbuster, and then uh, you know George Lucas ends up creating sci-fi as a mainstream genre
yeah.
product. It's nuts. It's kind of crazy. Because no other creation or franchise or any adaptation was able to actually like do that and like bring this into the mainstream. There was always like I think there's an interesting like couple of like analysis and papers and articles about like the attempts of bringing sci-fi into the mainstream, like space opera sci-fi into the mainstream, and how it failed up until Star Wars. So
Yeah. I mean,
really interesting stuff.
and then even
And yeah,
immediately after Star Wars, like one of the things I would always remember, like whenever I would see a Star Wars at Alamo Drafthouse, they will of course as part of their pre-shows they would show like the catered pre-show experience, and it was almost always like here are all of the Star Wars knockoffs that kind of came at the copycats that came after Star Wars, and like there are a million things that you've never heard of, but yeah, it's like they are all recognizably trying to chase that Star Wars trend, because it blew up, and that's from a time where the original Star Wars ran in movie theaters for a year, and was top of the charts a lot of that time kind of thing, just because it was such a different distribution model. But let's dive back into The
yeah, back
Mandalorian
to the
specifically.
Mandalorian.
A little bit of history
Yeah,
on The Mandalorian here. Originally released, as part of the Disney Plus launch lineup, between November 12th, 2019, and the last episode of season 1 aired on December 27th, 2019. Much to the chagrin of a lot of people, Mandalorian, as well as many other Disney Plus shows, kind of avoided the like, let's throw everything out there and just let people binge watch it. They've opted for the more traditional like week by week kind of thing, which personally I think is great for shows like this, because it keeps
hmm
it in the conversation. You're constantly talking, and you spend like a week theorizing. What did this mean? What's next? And then also just like geeking out about Easter eggs and stuff, is always fun with a show like this. Other releases at the time, you had, of course, again, all the Disney Plus launch shows like The Imagineering Story, which was one of our early That D Plus shows.
it was.
Cam and I talking about that. Great documentary series out there. You have the High School Musical, the series out there, as well as Encore, and The World According to Jeff Goldblum were some of the other kind of Disney Plus shows that came out around this. Runtime episode, each episode runs about 40-ish minutes, some shorter, some longer, but that's kind of the average sweet spot time there. In the Star Wars timeline of things, this aired most of its first season in the lead up to The Rise of Skywalker, which came out December 20th, 2019. So really only I think that last episode came out after the fact. And I remember there being some like articles touching on the fact that Baby Yoda's like healing power kind of gets introduced right before we would see that same Jedi power used in Rise of Skywalker. So it was like, maybe it was timed to make sure that like all of that was kind of hitting at the same time, so it wasn't just like, hey, this is coming out of nowhere or something like that. Although there was plenty of other things in Rise of Skywalker that came out of nowhere. And then chronologically,
that's yeah.
Yeah, chronologically in the Star Wars timeline of things, this occurs a few years after Return of the Jedi, and I believe I've not watched the series Star Wars Resistance, but my understanding is that's basically the immediate aftermath of Return of the Jedi, and then this is pretty much the aftermath of Resistance there. About 5 years after the fall of the second Death Star, I think, is kind of the timeline that we're on so far. Roll call, as we touched on, Jon Favreau here being kind of the director, showrunner, and creator of The Mandalorian here. Jon Favreau having a long storied career as a director. He kind of made waves. His first big thing was Elf, which is like weird to think about that being like 20 years ago now or something. Because it was 2005, 2003, something like that. I don't remember the specifics, but it's like, yeah, we haven't really had like a big holiday movie since then that has probably like become a holiday staple in the way that Elf did. He followed it up with Zathura, which was like the space Jumanji. But then he, of course, really made it big, launching the MCU with Iron Man and Iron Man 2. And then he would do Cowboys and Aliens, which I joked online recently that The Mandalorian is basically Cowboys and Aliens done right, with the Star Wars IP. Chef, The Jungle Book, and the live-action Lion King are Jon Favreau's other kind of notable achievements out there. You also kind of show running with him. You have Dave Filoni out there, of course, with a history from Avatar: The Last Airbender, as well as kind of being the extended canon, lead on Star Wars: The Clone Wars, both the movie and the series, as well as Star Wars Rebels. He's directed many an episode of all of those shows. Rick Famuyiwa, kind of another one of the other directors for episode 6, The Prisoner, which I just rewatched kind of right before we sat down to record. Great episode. He is much more of an indie guy, with one of his notable things being the movie Dope that he kind of wrote and directed. Bryce Dallas Howard, best known, of course, for her acting work. Prior to this, most of her direction had really been like documentaries or short films, so this was one of her big breakout directorial things. Deborah Chow has done a lot of directing in TV, including one-offs for Mr. Robot, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Better Call Saul. And she's also signed on to be kind of the directorial lead on the Obi-Wan series, whenever we finally get that. And, of course, Taika Waititi in here, best known for Thor Ragnarok, What We Do in the Shadows, Jojo Rabbit, and then, of course, he will be doing Thor Love and Thunder coming out sometime in the future, as well as he has been attached to an untitled Star Wars film himself. On the writing side of things, Jon Favreau wrote most of the episodes here, having previously written Swingers and Chef. Dave Filoni did write the Gunslinger episode, that, of course, he has writing credits on Clone Wars, Rebels, and Resistance in the Star Wars universe. Rick Famuyiwa there, who directed The Prisoner, also wrote the episode The Prisoner, and again, had written his film Dope. And Christopher L. Yost is the other credited writer on the Prisoner episode, who got his start. This jumped out at me on X-Men Evolution, the animated series that I remember from like high school.
That was such a good show, though.
Yeah, and it's out there on Disney Plus now. I remember like rewatching it a couple years ago.
It doesn't age well. It does not age well.
It didn't age terribly. It's very much influenced by the original X-Men films version of X-Men. So yeah, it probably doesn't age as well as like the original animated series from the early '90s, but this like 2000s reboot, I think it's fine more or less. Because I rewatched it a couple years ago on like Hulu or Netflix or something like that. At least like I don't know, first season or something. But in addition to X-Men Evolution, he also wrote for the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated show, which I've done a couple episodes of that D Plus show on, as well as he was the screenwriter for Thor: The Dark World, and then kind of got a little bit of his groove back with Thor Ragnarok, in that very loosely structured script, I'm sure. And then he has also written a handful of episodes of Star Wars Rebels prior to this. Starring.
I was about to say, ooh.
Yeah. Thor: The Dark World. I was like, oh, you poor guy.
Like, well,
good
I mean,
for a redemption story, though.
I don't know. Like, for me, conceptually, Thor: The Dark World's really cool. It just doesn't execute it greatly. Like, there's a lot of execution issues with it, not really like fundamental core concept issues.
Yeah.
That's the rough part for me, personally.
I think
that's the rough thing.
I think it suffers from like an uninspired villain, especially as like a follow-up to Loki. Like the fact that you kind of still end up having Loki as like a side bad guy in that is like, I mean, it's great because Loki is the more compelling character, but like just the what Malekith or whatever, the Christopher Eccleston elf character is just like
it's
completely
it's
detached from everything.
Like they spend so much time on really unimportant stuff that they really should have used to flesh out the realms.
Mm-hmm.
Because Thor going across the realms to fight in all these different battles is kind of like glossed over, when it really could have been a much more compelling film of like this war of attrition that that Asgard finds itself in at this point. When they're being attacked from all sides by all these different worlds, and there's a like mysterious force like guiding this and planning this, and the elves are kind of like shoved in with like some like really bad exposition, when in like mythology, like this is actually like Greek, or not Greek, but Norse mythology, this is really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And as a fan of Norse mythology, I love it because you don't really hear so much of elves in Norse mythology are important, but not popularized in like retellings like the ice giants are.
Mm-hmm.
The elves are
there aren't elves in God of War, for example.
Yeah, there aren't elves in God of War. There might be in a sequel. That'd be cool.
Maybe they make their appearance in Ragnarok. I mean, yeah, like like Thor: The Dark World in particular is one of those movies that suffers from being in that era of MCU films that was starting to try and set up the larger MCU universe. Yeah. Like I think Avengers: Age of Ultron is like the ultimate kind of like offender on that level, but I think Thor: The Dark World was also trying to set some of those larger things up, because that's where we prior to that we had like the Tesseract had been introduced, but the introduction of the Aether there is where the idea of like the Infinity Stones starts to get like fleshed out and introduced into the Marvel universe, and I think the movie suffers a little bit as a result of that. But on the starring side of things, we have Pedro Pascal here as the Mandalorian himself. Jin Jarek or something. I forget his name now at this point. Of course, he kind of made a name for himself coming off of Game of Thrones in the middle of that show's run, but then really kind of shot to prominence with his role in Narcos He was also in a movie I really liked, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and then he will
Oh,
be
he was great in that.
yeah, he was a lot of fun as Whiskey, and then he will be in Wonder Woman 1984 whenever that comes out at this point. Yeah, of
It'll
course,
come out next month.
maybe we'll see. I don't know if theaters are gonna do well if we go into like back into lockdown and stuff like that. Um,
That's a good point.
yeah. Carl Weathers here playing Grief Karga, of course, best known from the Rocky series probably and Predator, as well as movies certainly near and dear to my childhood, Happy Gilmore, and then of course playing an exaggerated version of himself in Arrested Development. So seeing him hop into a show like this is just like a fun kind of out of character type of thing. Gina Carano here playing Cara Dune, probably best known for Fast and Furious 6 as well as Deadpool, and of course her MMA background prior to that. And then Nick Nolte in here as Quill, best known for movies like 48 Hours and The Prince of Tides, and long storied career of like 80s and 90s kind of performer there. And then a handful of I didn't pull them into like the core cast here, so I don't have like their full bios or whatever. But Giancarlo Esposito, of course, is in here. Werner Herzog, has a very memorable and fun role there. Taika Waititi, also in addition to directing, plays IG-11, which is fun. Amy Sedaris, Bill Burr, Clancy Brown, Ming-Na Wen, Adam Pally, and Jason Sudeikis are just some of the like fun kind of stunt casting things that they explored and played around with there in season 1. And yeah, just lots of fun. Oh, hey, it's cool to see them pop up in this universe. And in many cases, like a lot of those, it is people under stormtrooper masks or something like that. So you don't even realize it's them until you see their name in the credits after the fact or something like that. At Adam Pally and Jason Sudeikis in particular, I remember in that last episode of season 1 being like, they were the stormtroopers that punched Baby Yoda. Fuck those guys.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
No, like it's funny. Jason Sudeikis has a funny interview with I think it's either Jimmy Fallon or Seth Meyers.
Yeah, I think Seth
where,
Meyers.
Yeah, and
he talks about having
so,
forgotten that he did that until like he's getting all these hate tweets and stuff.
Yeah, because Olivia Wilde's just like his wife is just like, so you're getting canceled, and he goes, why am I getting canceled? Like I haven't done anything, and she goes, you hit Baby Yoda. He goes, oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
He's like, and he said like they didn't even know what they were doing till they got there.
Yeah.
And they're like, cool, you guys are in Stormtrooper armor. There's this thing in your bag. When it makes noise, hit it.
Do you have any kind of favorite guest performances from this first season that stand out to you?
I think my favorite guest performance has to be, Giancarlo Esposito as Moff Gideon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so good. Like he's so good.
I mean, like, yeah, he's definitely gotten really great at being that like very prim and proper, but also like very like can turn on a dime kind of malicious character. Obviously, him very much rising to prominence from Breaking Bad, of course, and has continued, diving into that role of Gus Fring on Better Call Saul and the prequel stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like seeing him pop up in this, in The Boys, he's very much playing that same kind of character. He's almost assuredly going to be playing that same kind of character in Far Cry 6 based on the cinematic trailer that kind of introduced him earlier this year.
I will say Werner Herzog might have the most impactful one, not only on screen but off screen. Werner Herzog is a creepy looking weird dude who it turns out is like one of the sweetest, nicest old men that you'll ever meet in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has anything bad to say about him. They all love it. Like anybody who's ever worked with him loves him dearly.
Yeah.
He just has a finger on the pulse of the macabre, and because of that, he can deliver just in this perfect, creepy German accent. Like not creepy, like off-putting. Like it's an off-putting and almost disturbing German accent.
Mm-hmm.
Just heavy, but not to the point of being like incomprehensible or being comedic. It's just so good. Like he just carries that line, and he's so good as the client because he like like his pauses. His pauses are probably the best part about him. He'll pause and then like give like one little thing that's so nefarious. Like, oh, like, yep, here's the tracker to find it, yada yada. Pause. It's the bounty's half if it's dead.
Yeah. Yeah,
And it's
his
oh,
cadence and his tempo is perfect for what that kind of role is looking for,
yeah.
especially, the idea of this character that is, would have been probably a big shot in the Imperial Army that is now, of course, just remnants and scattered to the wind and all that stuff. And you see him surrounded by his, weathered stormtrooper,
Love that.
little arsenal kind of. And yeah, it's great. And then, yeah, as you alluded to, one of the other trivia things here, after shooting scenes with Baby Yoda using a puppet, the crew decided to go for another take without the puppet to replace it with CGI during post-production in case it didn't look convincing. When Werner Herzog, who plays the client in the series, found out about this, he commented, "You are cowards. Leave it." The scenes with the puppet were eventually used. According to Herzog, it looked heartbreakingly beautiful. He's, of course, and that was one of the early stories that came out in kind of Baby Yoda lore was just how much of a champion Werner Herzog of all people was for this puppet that immediately stole everybody's heart. Yeah,
I mean, speaking of which, like
there.
it's probably hard to see, but my sister for my birthday,
Oh yeah,
she's gotten into this thing where you have like a mat that has different like colors on it, and then you put like colored like shiny beads on it.
mm-hmm.
She's really gotten into that as like an art and craft thing. But she made me this. I'll bring it down so everybody can. If you're audio listener, my apologies. But it's an absolutely just wonderful little portrait of Baby Yoda. Video watchers, you are in for a treat. I don't know if can you see that right? All right.
Yep.
I'm worried about the
good.
glare.
Yeah, there's a little bit of the monitor glare,
Yoda.
but you're fine.
Look, Baby Yoda, just being Baby Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Baby Yoda has stole my heart from the moment his little claw hand like reached out and Mandalorian's hand grabbed it back, or when Mandalorian puts out a finger and Baby Yoda's little claw grabs onto it, and it's like in that moment my heart is stolen, and I never want it back.
Yeah, but yeah,
I love him.
Obviously, Baby Yoda being the child, being the biggest thing to come out of this series, certainly. Just as kind of like it took the internet by storm and immediately made me feel bad for all of the people because if you recall, Disney Plus didn't launch kind of universally everywhere. So there were a lot of areas where it just wasn't available, including like our friends over in the UK. And so like just immediately the world and the internet is being spoiled with images of Baby Yoda and everybody, nerding out over this character, despite so many regions not being able to actually watch the show yet, and wouldn't get to see the show for another couple months. But yeah, I can appreciate the Werner Herzog and Baby Yoda love there. Speaking of, again in trivia, it was Donald Glover who inspired Jon Favreau to keep Baby Yoda a secret until the Mandalorian pilot episode debuted on Disney Plus. During the filming of the live-action remake of The Lion King, Glover, who voiced Simba in the movie, told Favreau that audiences like surprises. We were talking about music and pop culture, and he was saying that what people really like now is to be surprised because it doesn't happen that much, Favreau said. When Beyoncé did an album, she would just put it online and everybody would react to it. Just putting it out there spurred a conversation that would become more viral and bring more genuine attention than any marketing. Building off of that, Disney took great lengths to keep Baby Yoda under wraps until the show premiered, including not producing any merchandise ahead of time, because as we've seen from countless Marvel movies and stuff like that, toys leaking because all of the hands that touch those from the manufacturers to retailers is often where characters get revealed and leaked and stuff like that. So the fact that they thought ahead to say like, hey, yeah, there's probably going to be a missed opportunity for us in terms of money and marketing, but we think it'll have more an impact, I think was really kind of a smart, impressive choice there. But they do mention in the trivia here, there was one potentially dangerous source of leaks on set, kids. because obviously in episode 4 you have kids playing with Baby Yoda on that sanctuary planet. Quote, the thing that was terrifying was the notion of having children on a set and what was going to happen with kids seeing Baby, Bryce Dallas Howard said, who directed that episode of the Disney Plus series. Knowing the need to keep the secret, Howard took steps to prevent kids who acted in the episode, including her own son and daughter, from spilling the beans. All the kids that were on set, I had conversations with each one of them just about keeping Baby a secret, she says. And they were all just so great. But my kids, every single day when they were going back to school, before school, I would say, who do we not talk about today? And they would be like, Baby! It was amazing to get to see my kids on a Star Wars set just to have the time of their life, she adds. So yeah, just and I remember, like, even that, I remember tweeting at the time something to the effect of, like, I have never been more mad at all these kids in my life because they have known about Baby Yoda for months and none of us did. How cruel that they've gotten to enjoy that. According to Dave Filoni, there was one scene that required a large number of stormtroopers, but they didn't have enough costumes. He ended up drafting members of the 501st Legion fan club who specialize in making their own stormtrooper and clone trooper cosplays. Again, you can see that very heavily featured, very prominently featured in the Disney Gallery series on The Mandalorian. And just their, like, the fans' genuine excitement of them talking about the idea that, like, if you get, a stormtrooper armor that is on camera, that that means so much more as part of a collection or part of a costume. And the fact that suddenly all of their homemade outfits were going to be now deemed as on camera versions of their troopers was a ton of, like, just really cool to see. And
the 501st, yeah.
I have friends in the local theater community that are in 501st, are in, like, the Ghostbuster, like the real Ghostbusters stuff, and just do those kinds of cosplay things. And 501st in particular, as with many of those groups, they do, like, such great work for charities and stuff, and have always been such great ambassadors for the Star Wars community. Like, those are the guys that I would much rather think of than the angry internet forum commenters that are out there, harassing people like, oh crap, what's her name? Who played Rose, in just online.
Shoot,
and stuff.
I'm trying to remember her name. Ooh, this is not good. This does not bode well for us. It's too
as two white guys. I mean,
on camera.
Admittedly, though,
the episode you got me to be on camera, you make it problematic.
I just am not familiar enough with her work as it is. She is going to be in the the Pixar movie, though, coming out next year, right? Or is it? I guess not Pixar. I think it's just a Disney one on the Chinese kind of culture, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like I've given you plenty of time to look this.
Kelly Marie Tran. Kelly Marie Tran. Thank you very much.
Kelly Marie Tran. Yes.
Kelly Marie Tran. We are terrible for forgetting her name. No, she's phenomenal. I was not a fan of the Rose character. Really, more of, like, the Rose character in and of it herself is fine. It's like I could go on a long diatribe about, like, structurally my problem with Last Jedi, despite the fact that overall, like, it's one of the only films that's ever made me breathless, like, taking my breath away in the middle of a film. So not a hater on it by any stretch of the imagination, but she is phenomenal. The 501 the 501st is by far, like, when you that is who Star Wars fans used to be known as. Mm-hmm. Those were the guys and gals that really created, like, what Star Wars was about community and acceptance. No matter who you are, what background you come from, as long as you're there to be a positive influence, you can be part of the 501st. And that really started to, like, take a weird turn, because I like to call them like armchair Star Wars fans, like, armchair quarterback type of people who do a lot of the, like, like, well, they did it this way, but they should have done it that way, which I'm definitely a part of. But like, when you want to talk about real Star Wars fans, like the real fans, that's the 501st. That's the people who are out there promoting, like, goodness and community and you know, everything great that the 501st does. They do so much for charity, so much to raise money for, children's hospitals and specifically, children's efforts. But just overall, just what a wonderful, wonderful group of people, and to be honored to be part of Star Wars history and having their armor show up in the show is a tremendous honor that it is more than well deserved for them. Just nothing but love for those folks.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I have definitely thought about joining the 501st, but to find a suit that would fit the rotund figure that I am would be a difficult one. And like honestly, I don't want to be known as the fat stormtrooper over there. Hey, who's the fat stormtrooper over there? Like I don't want that. I don't like I don't that's smoke I don't want in my life.
I'm
right?
sure the 501st welcomes all body types.
They do, but I'm not talking about the 501st. Like they'd welcome me with open arms. They're lovely, lovely, wonderful people. I'm worried about being like, yo, one of these stormtroopers does not look like the others.
Mm-hmm.
One of the stormtroopers is fat.
You're worried about people paraphrasing the line saying, aren't you a little too fat to be a stormtrooper?
Yes, that is exactly my worry, my problem.
Yeah. Just be like, shut up, I'm here to rescue you. And then you're fine. Another trivia point here, since we touched on, of course, kind of the show's lineage with and reverence for the Western style. Of course, one of the stuntmen that plays the Mandalorian, basically, in addition to Pedro Pascal, of course, you have the stuntman that really does a lot of the kind of hand-to-hand combat stuff, and then you have the stuntman that does a lot of the gun work stuff, and that the gunplay one is played by Brendan Wayne, who is the grandson of legendary actor John Wayne, of course, known for his work in the Western genre of films.
And being racist.
I mean, probably. Like it's one of those I don't want to excuse. Like I'm also. I don't know John Wayne's racism history nearly as much as Clint Eastwood's has come to light, of course.
Oh, that's true.
But I'm sure. Like,
I guess if we shouldn't throw stones at Western paragons without expecting some backlash, I suppose.
I mean, it's not even that. It's like obviously it was a different time and there were different sensibilities. Not that excuses it at all, but like it being surrounded by that as a norm. That's something that always has to be at least kept in context, I guess.
Yeah, but anyway, his grandson's not responsible for his
exactly.
like life.
There's that. Same with Eastwood's kids.
Yep.
So yeah.
Let's take a moment here to talk about, if we're talking about some controversy, let's talk about some real controversy for a moment.
I mean,
or we
could just not. We could just continue on with the show.
We got it. If we don't, I feel.
What controversy are you going to tackle?
I'm just going to briefly mention. I wanted to bring it up when we mentioned her, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Gina Carano's
Gina Carano.
Recent
her transphobic comments. Yeah, absolutely.
Her transphobic comments and taunting, I guess, is bullying is probably a better way to put it. Not great.
Agreed. It's one of those things I don't keep up closely enough with her or with entertainment news on that front, because I do feel like I've seen her, some of her problematic tweets, but then I've also seen tweets of her saying that like Pedro Pascal has sat down and talked to her and made her appreciate. Like I feel like I've seen similar things out of like Randy Orton or something on the wrestling side of things, sitting down and having conversations with Big E about Black Lives Matter, and that, turning his mind around on how he could have handled things better, how he could have addressed things better. I feel like I've seen those tweets from those kinds of tweets from Gina Carano as well, but then I also feel like after that I still saw more problematic things. So
it's the after stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, like, and we touched on that when we've talked about J.K. Rowling, of course, recently. Like, trans lives matter, of course, and trans women are women, trans men are men. That's absolutely something we stand by and have no place for kind of that hatred or dismissive tone towards anyone in the LGBTQ community. So yes, I mean, it's I retract my reticence at approaching the
That's fair.
controversy that you mentioned.
I forgot to mention it before we started. I was like, we should probably definitely mention Gina Carano being a transphobe,
Yeah,
which is just not great considering I'm one of those people who actually really enjoy her character. Um,
yeah, and that's there's always that issue with separating the art from the artist, of course, in this case, because yeah, I like that character. I think her performance as that character is fine. She's not doing a ton of heavy lifting, admittedly, but
no.
like she's doing what she was hired to do and what she showed up to do. And so yeah, seeing her as a character in the Star Wars universe, which is which tries to pride itself on being so inclusive and so often progressive, seeing a representative of that spewing those kinds of things is always depressing and unfortunate. And hopefully she can come around and realize that her words matter and they hurt people, and she can kind of reevaluate that and reassess her personal decisions.
There's always a way back until you're dead.
Yes. So I don't know.
I was gonna say
yeah,
one more thing. Oh, never mind. It's about Finn and Poe being the real couple. Anyway.
Okay.
It was in my head. I was like, this is important. And I went back to it, and I looked at it, and I'm like, this is not important, Cameron. Why'd you mark this as important? Move
on. So did you, in advance of sitting down to discuss this today, did you go back and rewatch the first season at all, or have you just kind of been too busy with everything else going on in the world right now?
I definitely tried to.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, well, if I'm gonna go back and watch the first stuff, I should probably watch the new episode, and then that got put off.
Yeah.
But like I've rewatched season 1 of The Mandalorian 6 times.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you think it holds up, especially I guess in this era of Star Wars, where obviously the movies have made a lot of waves, the sequel trilogy, because they didn't necessarily have like a cohesive vision across the trilogy, whereas this very much feels tied into the same kind of universe that we've gotten stuff like Clone Wars. We've had another season of Clone Wars that has come out since this, like the final season of Clone Wars came out.
Yep.
After The Mandalorian, and this very much feels like an element, a component of that universe as much or more so even than the films. So how do you think kind of it holds up as a show in the Star Wars canon of things, as kind of the first live action Star Wars show?
I think that it holds up really well. And I think that it's less to do with, and I think it does something that's really good, which is it doesn't focus on the complexities or the largeness. When I mentioned earlier, George Lucas was kind of like obsessed with the kind of macrocosm of Star Wars. This very much eschews that and focuses very much on a microcosm.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes it in a path of, there is a lot to say about how successful and efficient the Empire was about basically destroying record and remnant and memory of the Jedi across the galaxy, to the point where a kid who was literally like a child in the Clone Wars does not recognize or remember like Jedis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
other than what he was taught from like the history of Mandalorians, which when you actually dig into the
think that's editorializing a little bit in terms, because I argue, I often, we've had this conversation many times, I argue that's a weakness in like both of us are putting our own interpretation of the story on top of it, because none of that is actually addressed. Like I think it's a weakness in that, like, these characters of course should know who these things are because they lived through it. It's not like, yes, if it was a generation or two ago, how efficiently things have been quieted and dismissed, but the fact that Mando grew up in this war, and that Cara Dune fought alongside, theoretically, or certainly had like General Skywalker leading the resistance that she was a part of.
Yeah, that's true.
It
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
it doesn't track that they don't know some of these characters, but your interpretation is that it's that the Empire was, you know, ruthless and efficient in quelling that, which again I appreciate and love that we can have those kinds of conversations,
yeah.
even if we disagree on the assessment of them.
I also think there's an aspect that the Jedi, like we see the film, the prequel trilogy from the eyes of the Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have an understanding of their order and like their internal politics and like But Trevor, who's the current general of the United States military?
Admittedly, I don't know because
Yeah.
but I'm also like, yeah, I I mean,
Can you name in the
I
last?
but
Because we've
I
technically
know
been at
the
war, Trevor.
president of the United States.
Yeah, but well, I know who Supreme Chancellor Palpatine is.
Yeah.
Like, but like when you really look at it, it's like okay, so it's the war and you know explanation, of course, there. But when you also get into the idea that like, can you name and like we've been at war as a country, we've been at war for almost 20 years, Trevor.
Yep. I know.
Can you name?
We
Can you name?
went to war with Iraq on my birthday in 2003.
So with just Iraq for 17 years.
I mean,
And
but like,
can
so
you name?
to
Can you
that,
name
I can't name
five
the
of the
current
major
general,
commanding officers?
but I can name, yeah, I can name Colin Powell, I can name McNamara. Like I
Colin
can
Powell
pick
was not a
names.
general. He was Secretary of State.
Okay, okay.
He wasn't even Secretary of War.
He
No
has
offense.
a lineage in the military though. So
He was
that's,
general during Desert Storm.
which still I know and remember. like that also happened within my life. So yeah,
But he was
I
the
appreciate
yeah, no, like
I
yeah,
appreciate the analogy, but I think
yeah.
it's
Back to the
you know,
Mandalorian.
yeah.
But back to the Mandalorian. I really love they've definitely focused on like the big things that you are concerned that like the Star Wars films are concerned about don't matter here at all.
Yeah, one
You
of the
can
things.
sit somebody yeah, you can sit somebody down who's never seen the Star Wars films and say, "Watch this," and they can find enjoyment out of it. They don't
Yeah,
have to know that Baby Yoda's the baby version of a character that existed before. It's just a cute baby alien called the Child.
yeah,
The Mandalorian is just this like gunslinging guy who's from like a clan of other cool fighting gunslinger people. Like you really have this microcosm going on here, and it's awesome that they're telling such very like different kinds of stories. I think the Prison Break story, is possibly one of the most unique ones because it very much is focused on how does Mandalorian fit in a crew of criminals and misfits.
yeah. I mean, we're diving into yet another bounty hunter story in this universe, with the
Yeah.
Mandalorian here. And one of the things that I love as kind of the pitch that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni often talk about for this show is we're gonna make a show with all of the action figures that you got from your brother as hand-me-downs or something like that, or it's
Yeah.
we couldn't get the Lukes and the Leias and the Darth Vader action figures, so we got like that second or third run of characters that are, you know, the IG droid, or that are the you know, the Mandalorian, or the Ugnaught kind of character. It's playing around in that aspect of the universe, and that's where again, somebody like Dave Filoni coming in, who has, you know, that encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars, can really thrive. And I think it is a show that, yeah, you don't need that that history with the series, like, but it is such a richer product if you have it, because you're going to see so many things and recognize those. I mean, the fact that like the thing that the Beskar is held in, the ice cream container, is purely fan service to people that saw one guy in Empire Strikes Back fleeing Cloud City with something that looked like an ice cream maker, and they have decided to turn that into, you know, oh, it's a carrying container for valuables. It's basically like a portable safe. Like, that is something for the deepest of deep fans that go to Celebration and like dress
Oh,
up
not me.
as that character, because, you know, he has like because everybody in the in the movies and stuff has such a deeper lore that has been created after the fact. Like it is those kinds of things that help ground this series in its Star Wars mythology, but also like honor and revere kind of what has come before it. Especially, there's a lot of little nods again in season 2 episode 1 that I won't touch on, but like they're like every episode has those kinds of things. You can go and watch like Easter egg breakdowns from every episode of The Mandalorian. You're going to see a ton of fun things, be it the types of aliens that you have that maybe were just were last seen in the cantina in Star Wars A New Hope. They showed up
Yep.
in one scene in the cantina, got maybe a random action figure off of that, but really were just like spare creature costumes that Lucas found around the set or something like that, made a character. And now those kinds of aliens are coming back into into the scene because the creators and the people behind this show have such a deep love that they look at a character and say, well, what if we just just as a fun little nod to such and such a scene did this thing. There's another thing. It's a little piece of trivia that I didn't include, but like Mark Hamill has a cameo appearance or a quote unquote appearance in episode 5, The Gunslinger,
Mm-hmm.
where he is voicing the droid that is working in the Mos Eisley Cantina, which of course during Luke Skywalker's time on in Mos Eisley, droids were not allowed there. So it's a fun little like full circle nod to bring him back in to voice this one or two lines of this character and make no big deal about it or anything like that. It's one of those things I didn't learn about until the Disney Gallery thing kind of pointed it out, and I love that. But like even that, like the R5 droid, makes an appearance in that cantina as well, and is still there on Tatooine all these years later. Didn't have to be, could have just been like any other thing, but they were like, hey, let's go ahead and make him up to look like that R5 droid, including like the little sparks and damage from when R2D2 messed with him. It's great little things like that, that just make this such a richer aspect of the universe than I think we've gotten to really see in a little while. So yeah, I think it holds up incredibly well. Any favorite moments that you want to touch on from kind of this first season, apart from just everything Baby Yoda does? Because of course Baby Yoda is the best.
Baby Yoda's the best. He's the best. He's the best of us. Uh, he's how I know they're still good in the world. No, like I think honestly one of my favorite scenes is Baby Yoda's in it, but it's really more of the IG-88 droid, where like we saw him kind of like be a ruthless killing machine in the first episode, but it goes even further in the second to last, no, at the beginning of the last episode, where he is playing babysitter,
Yeah.
and what he does is just so cool. And Baby Yoda, of course, like thinking this is the funnest thing ever. And their reaction is just wonderful. No, I really think that, especially from, if I really have a few things I'd point out, it's the the Mandalorian Mando getting the upper hand when, like in the first couple episodes, he really gets his shit kicked in.
Sometimes like it seems inconsistent. Like in the first scene we're introduced to him, like he holds his own against a whole bar of people and it does just fine. Like he gets maybe a little beat up because he's fighting against 5 or 6 other guys, but he still wins the day and collects his bounty.
No, for sure. No, what I love about him and Mando's character in general is he's never it's never going to be like he's this. It'd be so easy, especially for people who are fans of Mandalorian characters and culture and stuff, to come in and be like, oh, he should be winning every fight because Mandalorians are these super incredible people who are just so awesome, and forgetting that Boba Fett fell into a Sarlacc pit because blind Han Solo hit his jetpack with a pole.
Yeah.
The fallibleness of Mando is phenomenal because Sorry, I just remembered a really, really funny scene in the last episode where IG-88 pulls up his helmet and says, "Your central
IG-11.
process." Yeah, IG-11. Thank you. IG-11 says your central processing unit has been damaged. He goes, "My brain is broken."
Yeah, you mean my brain? Yes, that was a joke.
So good.
Yeah,
Because he
it's
has a serious concussion, so he's working.
yeah. Oh yeah, like there are so many great things, and yeah,
Oh,
IG-11 is, I think, great,
so good.
especially off of how the the mythos around IG-88, of course, comes from like the Tales from the Star Wars Cantina and the expanded universe stuff. Because what we actually get of that character in the original trilogy is, a static machine that was cobbled together using things from the Star Wars, the Mos Eisley Cantina, like repurposing parts from the drink machine there or something like that, just to look like this cool robot. So to finally see that droid in action in that first episode is really cool to really explore and see, like, oh yeah, this is why a robot makes so much sense as an assassin droid, is because they
Mm.
can be shooting at like 360 degrees. They're calculating out all sorts of trajectory stuff. They can absolutely be more ruthlessly efficient than any humanoid type thing can be. But yeah, then you get the fun juxtaposition of it getting repurposed as the nursing droid.
Hmm.
Even that, like, that little montage of like Quill teaching it to be caring and stuff, and not just drop boxes on critters and stuff like that, just a whole fun sequence. It's not something that you needed to have in there, but it's like that is the most Taika Waititi aspect of, I think, those episodes that I'm pretty sure he directed, kind of those
Yeah, he
paired.
did.
Um,
He directed those, but I will say a really incredible character is, of course, Carl Weathers,
mhm.
as Carl Weathers, but in Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Do
he's
the hand
so
thing, baby.
baby, baby, do the hand thing.
Do the
Do the hand
magic
thing.
hand thing. Do the magic hand thing. And
Just
baby
waves
like,
at him.
yeah. I have
He's
nothing.
so good.
I've got no ideas. Yeah, he like
Yeah, he's
that.
so
That is the most him playing his Arrested Development character, I feel like, in this whole series. And even that is just like, it's a fun little, just it's a fun moment in Star Wars, because at the end of the day, Star Wars is filled with those kinds of fun moments. We often get lost in the grand soap opera-ness of the space opera, but there are just so many great little comedic beats, and I think Mandalorian does a great job of really honing in a lot of those.
yeah.
Even like, I mean, so many of just the baby's reaction shots are that, and that's why we see them memed all to hell in the aftermath.
So good.
Yeah, him sipping his soup and all
His
that stuff.
soup. No, I will say one of my favorite things with scenes that he's in is his heel face turn when he is predictably going to betray Mando and Baby Yoda to take Baby
Oh,
Yoda to
sorry,
the
I
Imperials.
thought we were talking about the baby. It took me a
No,
second
the
to
baby
realize you
suit.
meant Carl
No,
Weathers.
that's
I
what
mean,
I was gonna say about Gina Carano. I was gonna say, like, sometimes you just wish that Baby Yoda had just like finished the job with Gina. Um, that's what it was.
yeah.
That's what was the funny like quip line that it was like way. I probably should have just kept it to myself at this point. Anyway, no, when Carl Weathers, when he's grabbed by the night bat and he's gonna die from the toxic poison, and then Baby Yoda heals him and like gets tuckered out by it, and he just like he has that look on his face of like this is a man who like in a moment has like something has profoundly impacted him and he has changed.
Hmm.
And then you're like, oh well, that'll be interesting. I wonder how that pays off. Next scene pays off right away.
Yeah.
Shoots the two bodyguards that he had and said, okay, we were gonna betray you, but I
Yeah.
can't. And it's like,
Yeah.
why not? He's like, because I owe your baby a life debt.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's so good. The like any of the final standoff moments from any of those last few episodes, actually from all of the episodes, are phenomenal. When Mando in the breakout episode, prison break episode, he does the like just always like knowing these criminal types so well that he can always stay two steps ahead of them.
Hmm.
And so when he like whether it's he knows he's going to get backstabbed and put into that cell, so he has something prepared for it. He knows how to handle just like every aspect he needs to. And then at the very end, when he knows he's going to get betrayed by uh, the people who hired him, he leaves the tracker behind
Yeah.
on it, and just like, and of course you have like a really wonderful like, looks like the tracker beacon's on that space station. What should we do? Well, blow it up.
Yeah,
All right, let's blow it up.
yeah. It's, again, I just rewatched that episode, and yeah, you have the great little trio of cameos from the directors, from Dave Filoni, Deborah Chow, and Rick Famuyiwa there, as the X-wing fighters, and basically, yeah, they're just like there on a routine mission, and one of them's like, looks like they're launching a gunship. Well, I guess we got to blow these guys up then.
Blow these guys up.
And yeah, I mean, I love that episode in particular, just as a whole thing. Because it takes a break from the Western motif and becomes a horror movie where the Mandalorian is the monster. Once he's betrayed and he is basically out. He is Jason, hunting down his prey one by one. And it's shot that way very deliberately, and there's just a ton of fun, like using that.
Good point.
But and then one of the best things is, like, you see most of that crew still alive in that cell at the end of that episode. So I fully expect them to somehow break out and make their way back, and we haven't seen the last of them, because and so much of that, like, me thinking that, comes from how those kinds of characters get introduced in Clone Wars and in Rebels and then come back, and you have it makes more fun, and you have more fun connection to those characters when they return. There's a character that returns in season 2, episode 1, that comes back, and it could have just been anybody, but the fact that it's a character we've met before immediately, like, does some of the the legwork on introducing, like, we don't have to be introduced to another new character. It is, these characters have a relationship, have a history that you can play on and you can build on moving forward. And so I look forward to seeing kind of Bill Burr come back into the fold at some point down the line, with a vendetta against Mando there and the child.
Every one of those characters was awesome, but Bill Burr's character especially, as like this like disrespectful gunslinger with a third mechanical arm, and like how it's used and how like it's like that entire like setup, because that could easily just be like a dumb thing.
Yeah.
But the way that they use the way that it's directed is so great, because it really shows the like versatility of having that kind of third mechanical arm, droid arm, basically, to do things for you, and works out great. And then it turns out he's just a total scumbag. He just murks this poor kid. Just like murked out of nowhere.
He doesn't know. He doesn't.
Oh no! Who was it?
The actress who plays Tonks and was on Game of Thrones. The Twi'lek.
She does it.
Yeah,
Twi'lek does it.
Everybody's having like a an even hyper Mexican standoff in space kind of thing.
That's right.
And while everybody's pointing their gun, she just like throws the knife at the guy and kills him.
That's right.
And yeah, as another little trivia beat, that's the actor that has been the voice of Anakin, I believe, in the Clone Wars.
Okay.
That was a little cameo that the actor who plays like the rebel trooper on that, manning that ship, was the voice of Anakin.
Republic.
Like, and even that again,
Republic
like,
exists.
yes, yeah. There's just like, moments like that, that are celebration of the expanded universe. Obviously, one of my favorite little things is like the last image we get of the first season of Moff Gideon cutting his way out of that down TIE fighter with the Darksaber, that has become a very prominent aspect of Clone Wars and Rebels, and is very tied to the Mandalorian culture. So seeing him have that, and then immediately thinking, well, where did we last see that in those other shows? How did it get from that point to this point? Is exciting. How
did a fan favorite Sabine lose it, and Moff Gideon picks it up, and it's like, where did this disconnect come from? And that's awesome.
Because Sabine like gave it to the leader of that.
And Mandalore and the Emperor and the Empire stormed Mandalore.
Yeah, and so it's very much like, well, like we saw it, and it was in good Mandalorian hands. So what happened there in between that got it from them to Moff Gideon in the basically in the time of the the original trilogy of films. It would seem, and I look forward to seeing some of that in flashback or in just more of the extended canon kind of stuff, because like I love, and that's where again I say like, as somebody who came to Clone Wars late, but then eventually like engulfed the whole thing, didn't see Rebels until Disney Plus started, because I just didn't have access to it, and engulfed all seasons of that show almost immediately. Like I love the storytelling that they eventually found kind of their footing in. Like the first couple seasons of Clone Wars, there are some great moments in there, but I feel like they hit their stride in the later run of that show. And then Rebels is basically just, because it's not telling like an anthologized story, it's telling 4 seasons of Kanan's story and
Ezra.
Ezra, yeah, thank you. And that whole the crew of the Ghost. Like I look forward to, when I finished Rebels, I was like, I love that they're bringing back Clone Wars. I want to see where these characters go next. And so if we end up seeing where some of those characters go now in live action in The Mandalorian, that's even more exciting. Getting to see kind of how that expanded elements of the universe go. We touched on Solo earlier. I fully believe that the idea of like Darth Maul getting introduced as kind of the the bad guy in Solo would have tied into the Obi-Wan series and stuff, and maybe still will, and we will maybe see Emilia Clarke's character show up in that series, tying those elements together and stuff. And I love that it's the Star Wars version of the MCU's connectivity, but it's crossing over from animation to live action to the films, and we're getting to see kind of all those elements really tied together. And so that's certainly another standout that I loved seeing in the way that the first season wraps up there. But yeah, like there, even on that, like there are a ton of just great fun action sequences in that whole thing. Right before we started recording, I saw Rahul Kohli, I think, tweeted out like how much he loves that sequence in the final episode of season 1 of the Mandalorian going out and fighting down these waves of stormtroopers and Moff Gideon and all them, and just the excitement. The score is of course something that we have to touch on as a huge highlight of this. Ludwig Göransson just kills it, especially like John Williams is so synonymous with Star Wars that like thinking of anything that isn't trying to be John Williams is like unheard of, but he comes in and he kind of makes like the soundscape of this show his own.
Because when I think of the Mandalorian soundtrack and I think of its score, I don't think Star Wars. I don't think there's definitely some Star Wars there are certain homages to Star Wars and John Williams' work on it, but from the get-go, there is a much more modern tone taken with its music. It's not sweeping orchestra. It's like that classic synth, like wow, that you get when like something like a moment's touched on in the show, a big reveal is made. Like there's that sound that is very much singularly owned by just the Mandalorian as a show.
Yeah,
it is just that guitar, like that synthetic guitar, just like strum there with that, where it's so sharp that it pierces through the scene and gives a feeling of impact that feels like a futuristic Star Wars-esque twang that you would see from a classic Western.
Yeah, I was gonna say the main theme there is so evocative of and I just looked him up because it was Ennio Morricone, who recently passed, right? Who was so tied to Sergio Leone's work in the Western, and he is, when you think of Western music and sound cues and the like,
that's him.
That is him, and that is so clearly being referenced there in kind of the Mandalorian's
Hmm.
introduction, and kind of the central theme of the Mandalorian. Um, that, yeah, I think is like, but does still have those elements of Star Wars behind it. It's another it's probably one of the most fascinating episodes of the Disney Gallery show is the episode on like music and the score,
Mm,
because
yeah.
so much of that show is built around, the either the directors or the actors, or maybe some of the kind of CG crew behind the scenes, kind of talking about what went in, doing roundtable stuff.
Hmm.
And the Ludwig Göransson, like the episode with him, like it opens with him just kind of like alone to a camera in his, in his studio or something, talking about how he kind of like added instrument on instrument onto the thing. And it's just such a different, it's shot in such a different way, even that episode, that makes it stand out among everything else. And yeah, it's fascinating. I think it was one of the guys over at Screen Junkies slash Fandom that I saw that really described it in a way that resonated with me. In that the score for The Mandalorian is something that you could just kind of have like as good background music, and it fits there, and it fits there maybe better in your day to day life, versus John Williams that has like such great bombastic and iconic moments, but you wouldn't necessarily want that to just be like the soundtrack to your day. And kind of I love like that feeds into Star Wars the films being these very iconic moments in this, galactic war, versus the much more down to earth, any man kind of stories of the Mandalorian. I thought was a really good kind of comparison. But yeah, that's the music of the series certainly is easily one of the highlights, for me, that we would be remiss to not highlight and mention here. Any other favorite moments or scenes or anything you want to give a shout out to, or anything that didn't work for you in this series?
No, because I think every episode, like I've watched some, like I watched The Mandalorian in review from Kind of Funny. There is a there is a distinct tone and look that this show has that I think just puts it so far above other things where it doesn't have to. And I think a big criticism it gets is that what people want out of The Mandalorian is not what The Mandalorian is. The Mandalorian is not going to be a big budget Star Wars project, like a big budget Star Wars film. Millions upon millions of dollars invested into it. It is very much really like a realistic television show. It's working off
Mm-hmm.
of a very realistic television budget. Like it is not going to be this like people, and this is kind of I guess the biggest point I'm nailing on here is this is not a Star Wars story. This is not your what you've come to expect from watching Star Wars media. This is like whether it's even like animated or whatnot. This is very much a love letter, like an absolute love letter to the original expanded universe and its fans. For people who love these old tales, like ancient tales, or not ancient tales, but like the little side novels from that populated my elementary school library that had to do with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
The entire Star Wars section at the Mesa Public Library, where I used to just devour everything that I could. Any new Star Wars book, I was there and I was reading it. Um, like I have read garbage. I have read incredible prose and fiction from Star Wars Expanded Universe. This is an absolute love letter to the nerdiest of the nerds, the 501st, the people who love Star Wars more than anything else in the world and aren't hung up on the debate on whether or not the Last Jedi was whatever. It doesn't matter. Like this is not the film for the seasonal Star Wars fans. I'll put it that way. If you love Star Wars because every once in a decade you get a set of films that is like a technical marvel that you really enjoy, that's not what this is. This is a film there this is a show for I don't want to say real Star Wars fans, because you can be a real Star Wars fan and be a seasonal Star Wars fan. If you just like Star Wars, congratulations, you're a Star Wars fan. Let nobody gatekeep you.
Yeah.
But this show
But
is
also
a
don't
love.
gatekeep others.
Well, yeah, also don't gatekeep others. There's no gate. In my opinion, no gatekeeping is allowed in Star Wars. It's for everybody, um, regardless of the level that you want to dip your toes in, or you want to jump head first into, or you've been down here at the bottom with the rest of us for such a long time. Um, like I am straight up. Oh, I guess they actually don't ever show that, but like the imagery of pirates where they tell Will Turner what they did to his father and how they strapped his bootstraps to a chest and
Mm-hmm.
sunk him to basically be at the bottom of the ocean forever
Yeah.
as a skeleton man. I'm like, there's some of us who are down there like that. So, um, and this show is very much made for people like us. But if you want to watch some good Western Star Wars fun, just come in and enjoy it. It doesn't like you don't have to notice all these small things. It's The Mandalorian works on every level, whether you're a first-time Star Wars watcher or you're a long-time lover of the series. Whether you watched it when you were a like adult man in 1979, or you are basically just like, what's this Star Wars thing everybody's been talking about for such a long time? I'll watch The Mandalorian. It's all for everybody, man. But this is definitely a love letter to people like us. So
Yeah, I echo all of that really. And I like yeah, there are some episodes that maybe aren't as strong as others, but I had a great time every episode that I've watched so far. And at no point have I thought like my time is being wasted when I'm watching the show. I think it is such a different paced kind of thing that you maybe have to like adjust your expectations. The fact that it is much smaller stories, it is a much more deliberately paced story. The fact that so many moments are establishing shots of characters walking into a location, be it like, oh, we're gonna walk across the desert to really kind of show the vastness of this planet or something like that. Like it doesn't just immediately take you to where the action is. It really fills out those moments with kind of mood setting and setting that I think does a great job. And the fact that it is smaller stories, it is when the credits roll on an episode of the show, it's pretty much you have your Pedro Pascal, and then 4 or 5 other actors' names show up, and
mm-hmm.
that's really usually it. Yeah, there's usually occasionally like a handful of other characters that were in the background or had like 1 or 2 lines or something like that, but it is very like the end credits is another cool aspect of these shows, in that like so much of it is, hey, we're going to show you like the storyboards and the concept art behind these characters, what they looked like in our heads versus what you've just seen as they filled out. And oftentimes, like, that's how I end up realizing, oh, that's who was playing that character. I didn't, catch that on a first viewing or something like that. And yeah, I just love kind of I think of The Mandalorian in the same way that I thought of Blade Runner 2049, in that if you are going in expecting like a fast-paced action thing, you're going to be very disappointed, unfortunately, because that's not what those things are. These are much more slower, deliberately paced kinds of things that just want to put you down in this world and let you enjoy your time in it. And I think Mandalorian does that exceptionally well. And I can't wait to see kind of where it continues to go here in season 2 as we expand on the journeys of the Mandalorian and the child. And all the friends they meet along the way. So yeah, in terms of what would you give it as a grade from A plus to F there, Cam? What's your score on the report card for this one?
Well, Trevor, I'm sure everybody can understand when I give it an F minus. No, it's an A plus. It's a solid A plus.
Yeah, same for me. A
Yeah.
plus. I again, I think it's like, even, I mean, I gave when I reviewed The Rise of Skywalker, I gave it a 7.5, I think, maybe. In the
How
like
generous of you.
it's a good movie because most Star Wars is still a good movie.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's not great and it has its problems, but I still have a fun time seeing something like that. And yeah, I have a fun time, and I can enjoy all those extra little like in-depth Easter eggy moments that are for people like me that have consumed these, movies and TV shows and stuff so much over my lifetime that I can enjoy them. But even there, I'm still going to miss things because I'm not the super hardcore of the hardcore kind of fans, but I will go and watch like an Easter eggs, here's everything you missed in this episode, and I'll go and watch and be like, I did miss that. That's really cool that they included that little nod or that little reference. Even if it, flies over my head the first time I see it, there's clearly such love and attention put into the show that I love. And then, yeah, just seeing the behind the scenes and seeing the tech and the big sound studio that they've built to basically produce this show that is using video game technology to move the cameras in sync with the action on these big LED walls so that you don't have to go on location. You can shoot the whole thing, but you're not shooting it. You're not filming the stuff against a blue screen or against a green screen. You're shooting it against the rendered backgrounds that have been created so that the actors, aren't having to imagine this stuff. They can see it there while they're on set. They can see it while they're acting with all that stuff. It's just really cool stuff that is being used on this show, and I applaud them for the massive amount of resources they put into it as pretty much the Disney Plus flagship show. And I look forward to again seeing where they continue to go here in season 2.
Also, shout out to them. Oh, sorry, just gonna say. Last shout out here is shout out to them really like showing a range where they're like, you know what, you've seen enough sexy Twi'leks. Let's show you some very scary Twi'leks instead.
Yeah, here's the brutal ones, that are the bounty hunter side of things. These aren't the slave dancers at Jabba's palace. These are the ones that are out there just trying to survive. Yeah, yep. Absolutely. But they can still use that sexuality or sensuality to their advantage. The men have never been that necessarily, but
I don't know, because like when the brother and sister reunite, it's kind of like, that's creepy. That's crawly. That's weird and gross. I could go without my life without ever like kind of like picturing like stuff about this, but all right. I mean, Game of Thrones has ruined us. Game of Thrones has ruined us as a society.
Maybe that's what's feeding that, because I definitely didn't feel that when I saw the two of them together. Anyway, extra credit, other suggestions from Disney Plus if you like this. This interested me a little bit as I was compiling this list. Top of the list there is, as we've touched on many times in this episode, Disney Gallery Star Wars The Mandalorian, the 8-episode behind-the-scenes series on the making of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. Highly recommend checking it out. It's a lot of great conversations filled with like the smart ideas and love that was put into that show. Also, you have Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the series. And then basically all of the movies except the original trilogy are the other suggestions. So it gives you Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, and then Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. So, like, it amused me that A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi did not make the cut in like the top 8 suggestions for this. And so much, I think some of that is, this is a show that is really pulling from the love of the lesser loved aspects of Star Wars, I would say. The fact that you get, a lot of those kinds of little Easter eggy things that aren't, the things everybody goes to and thinks about when they think of Star Wars. That is pulling things from Clone Wars or pulling things from the prequels to give it a little bit of love here and there, I think is a fun little nod. Anything else you've been watching on Disney Plus there, Cam?
No.
Nope. Just kind of
that's simple. Just no.
Keeping up with everything going on in the politics world. No time for Disney Plus right now.
Yeah, if you're wondering what I've been on my, for people watching the video version, if you're wondering what I've been looking at my phone at, I am 100% looking at election results that haven't changed in 2 days.
Yeah, I looked at you, like I saw you out of the corner of my eye. I was like, I hope he didn't freeze up. And then when you like put your phone, I was like, oh no, he's just checking election results. Yeah, I had not been watching anything else on Disney Plus. I did spend a lot of the last couple days avoiding doom scrolling by watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, which I highly recommend. I thought that was a really great series. Anya Taylor-Joy just continues to astound me in the project she works on, and what a delightful performer she is. So check that out if you have Netflix. But yeah, other than that, that's going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Oh, actually, one other thing I will shout out in terms of extra credit. Another suggestion from me, if you are so inclined. We touched on them a couple weeks ago on That Nerdy Site show. Star Kid Productions. They do online YouTube musicals, and their take on the Star Wars musical is Annie the Musical, and it's basically about a New Hope Darth Vader trying to like reclaim his glory days of being a pod racer. Like he misses those kinds of glory days, and it's like, so it is another show that very much is trying to find a lot of things to love about the prequels in particular, and celebrate, because it came out, I believe, before any of the sequel trilogy started releasing, and it's just a fun romp that pulls in expanded universe canon stuff, has just a lot of fun performances, and it becomes very much like a buddy comedy sports movie thing of Darth Vader, Anakin trying to reconnect with his pod racing roots by getting his pit crew of like Jar Jar Binks together with like Boba Fett and Moff Tarkin, and it's
What?
just nonsense and fun. So check that out if you are so inclined. You can go find that on YouTube. Annie the Musical, I'm sure, should pull it up for you. ANI, like exclamation point. So that's another little thing I rewatched not too long ago. I will say it's like probably one of my least favorite of the Star Kid shows, in large part because they don't treat it like the way they handle the musical nature of it is not the actors performing. It's the actors doing like choreographed stuff under the band performing and singing the songs. So it's a weird little thing like that. It's an incredibly obscure thing that I'm sure very few people, if anybody, like listening would recognize. But there's a show I saw on Broadway called Moving Out, and it's basically a dance show. Like it is pretty much 2.5 hours of dance, but with a band playing Billy Joel music, and a core singer kind of playing Billy Joel songs on top of it, and they've kind of created a structure of a story around the songs, but it's not the actors singing those things. It's the actors are dancers, and they're doing these beautifully choreographed sequences while a band plays Billy Joel music alongside them. So that's very much the same kind of structure of Anakin there, or of Annie. But it's a lot of fun. The main guy, Chris Allen, who is playing Annie, does like horrifyingly spot on Hayden Christensen impersonations that they call on many times.
Wait, who plays Anakin?
It's Chris Allen. He was in Holy Musical Batman. He's Alfred.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so going back to your like fat stormtrooper, he is very much fat Darth Vader. And there's a moment in Act 2 where he's being a slave, because like one of the subplots is Mara Jade comes in and she's brought in as potential bounty hunter or even potential replacement for Palpatine's apprentice, as per like expanded universe canon kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's not really what she wants. Her real dream is she wants to be a slave girl at Jabba's palace. And so like while Annie is off trying to, go and win the Boonta Eve Classic again against Sebulba, who comes back, Mara Jade is out there trying to, become a dancer at Jabba's palace. And in one of the scenes there, Chris Allen, who up to that point is playing Anakin, comes out in basically a slave Leia costume that has a horrible malfunction, doesn't really work at all, kind of thing, and it just completely plays into to a lot of the comedy of a man of his size playing some of those characters. Yeah, Annie, it's completely out there, but if you have my sense of humor, you'll probably enjoy it. And it at the same time celebrates and also makes fun of the same kinds of things that we all make fun of in the prequels, like what terrible dialogue it has. Like they just, again, he goes into pitch perfect Hayden Christensen impersonations, saying the same lines that he said to Padme, and he's like, "Yeah, these are like Moff Tarkin. Like, here's those lines." He's like, "How did this ever work?" He's like, "I don't know, but she married me the next day or whatever." It's like, and sure enough, when Moff Tarkin tries to use those same pickup lines on a girl, she's wowed by it, inexplicably, kind of thing. So it's at the same time poking fun of, but also celebrating, the love of the prequels or whatever. So definitely check it out if you got a couple hours to kill and are in the mood for a Star Wars musical. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about The Mandalorian Season 1 here. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's, 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
No, I'm just kind of taken aback by the existence of this musical.
Yeah. It's definitely a thing. I mean, like, just as another kind of like the introduction to Jar Jar is he's about to commit suicide, like he's about to have drunk himself to death and commit suicide when Annie shows up, and Annie's like, JJ, what are you doing, buddy? And turns Jar Jar around, kind of thing. So yeah, lots of fun there. Nick Lang, who's the director for many of the Star Kids shows, plays the dual role of Obi-Wan and Emperor Palpatine. And his Obi-Wan is basically just like constant old drunk guy at the Mos Eisley Cantina. And yeah, there's a lot of funny stuff in the show. So definitely worth checking out. I'm sorry that that knowledge of its existence has thrown you for a little bit there, Cam.
I just Googled it and I'm seeing the outfit and I am.
Oh yeah, I mean, like it's like a lot of the outfits of like him as Darth Vader and the stormtroopers they're just wearing like Star Wars onesies basically. Or are you talking him as like the slave Leia character?
No, just
Okay.
Fat Vader. Fat Vader.
Yeah.
But to be fair, it worked out super well for them in Holy Musical Batman. But I digress.
Yeah. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I just want to give a shout out to all of the obviously this is the beginning of our year 2 here at That Nerdy Site. We celebrate our anniversary on November 1st. So we're launching stuff like video versions of the podcast. We've launched a couple new shows so far. We have That Conversational Podcast is kind of our one-on-one interview sit-down show. Cameron did a great episode on One Piece with Ian Prischel of A Plus Anime, formerly of OK Beast, that you can go check out either on YouTube or on podcast services. That Conversational Podcast, and then I've been doing on our YouTube a series of Let's Plays called That Retro Gaming Show, which so far is me sitting down and playing through games on the NES Classic. I've played through so far, as of recording, Super Mario Brothers, Ice Climber, and Excite Bike. So you can check out little Let's Play episodes on each of those. Bubble Bobble is next up on my list, which made a big splash in our second season of That Ultimate Video Game List show. So I look forward to sitting down and spending a little time with Bubble Bobble here in the next few days for that series. So yeah, check out all that and all the new stuff here from That Nerdy Site. And thank you to everybody that supported us in season 1 or year 1, I guess. And we hope to keep you around here in year 2 and moving forward. If you liked what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, and all that fun stuff. And if you can and feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.